Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julie Zunker, and I'm a board member of the Seattle Public Library Foundation. And I'm thrilled to join you for this wonderful event today with Liz Camfiord of Penguin Random House. I want to welcome all of our supporters, our donors, advocates, volunteers, board members, and board alumni. Thank you for supporting the Seattle Board and the Seattle Public Library Foundation. So I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. The Seattle Public Library is on Indigenous land. These are the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Duwamish people, past and present. A patron recently asked us, why do you do this acknowledgement? What do you want us to do? This is a great question. Acknowledging the land and bringing awareness to Native and American history is something we can do to demonstrate our organization's commitment to equity and to learning. We encourage you to use the library resources to study, understand, and act in a way that inspires you. We do acknowledge this land with gratitude and encourage you to do the same. Thank you for taking a moment to reflect. So before we bring Liz on, I wanted to just cover a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, everyone is muted right now, but you will have a chance to ask a question in a few minutes. If you require any technical assistance, please include such as included in captions, or you need to use the chat box, a member of our team will support you. So just enter whatever you need in the chat box and we will respond. You can also use the Q&A button on the screen at the bottom if you have any questions for our speaker, and we will get to questions at the end of her presentation. So I am very excited to introduce to you today our guest, Liz Camfiord. Liz has worked at Penguin Random House for more than 25 years and has generously joined us throughout the years to highlight amazing books hitting the shelves soon. So I'm going to turn it over to Liz. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie and Seattle Public Library Foundation for having me again. I so enjoy being able to talk with all of you book lovers about new and forthcoming books and audiobooks. I have some audiobooks too. So just give me a sec while I share my screen. And hopefully, let's see, I think that I'm not sharing my screen. Now I am. So we call this Borrow, Read, Repeat because we really love to cater to library patrons, and you will have an opportunity, if you don't already, to see the link where you can sign up for our Borrow, Read, Repeat newsletter, which is really a fun newsletter. So to begin, this is our big, huge splash book of next year. Prince Harry, his memoir. He lives an hour and a half up the road from me now, but this should be an expose to some degree. It's in every format, including Spanish edition, and we have high hopes that this will be a huge book for us. Now, Library Reads is, if you've been at this presentation before, you've heard me talk about what a wonderful program Library Reads is. This is where librarians and library staff across the country vote for their favorite books in any given month. So just announced this week is the December Library Reads list. And we often have books on the list of the 10 favorite books of librarians and library staff. This coming month, December, we have 5 titles, and I'll just tell you very briefly about 4 of them, and then the Jane Smiley I'm going to talk about in a little more depth later on. So Circus Train is just a World War II historical debut novel. It's a coming-of-age story about star-crossed lovers. And then we have Well Traveled. This is Jen DeLuca. She has many fans. This is her new rom-com, and it's set in the world of the Renaissance Fair. So that should be really fun. And then A Dash of Salt and Pepper. This is a hilarious small town rom-com set in Maine where hot single father chef hires recently returned and jilted sous chef. Sounds also like a Lifetime movie plot. Witcha Gonna Do. There on the bottom right is about an unlucky witch and her know-it-all nemesis who team up in this first of a new spicy romantic comedy series. So more to come from that series and Avery Flynn. The First Look Book Club. This is such a wonderful free book club where you get a chapter a day of a new release, 5 chapters by the end of the week. It's hosted by Suzanne Beecher, who's just a really wonderful book lover. She always has tidbits and recipes and tie-ins, and it's a great way to sample about 5 chapters a week of a new release and then see if you want to go on with the title. So tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow is one that First Look Book Club featured a while ago, but this is, if you haven't heard of it, this book has become quite the hit. It's a modern love story about 2 childhood friends who develop a hit video game, so it's great for video game lovers. It spans 30 years, going from Cambridge, Massachusetts to Venice Beach. It's timely about our need to connect and the purity of love among friends. So it's really an homage to friendship. This does for video games what Michael Chabon's The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay did for comics all those years ago. Highly recommend that novel. And for some new and forthcoming fiction, we have an in-house favorite, Trespasses. This is set in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, which, as you probably know, but I will remind everyone, the Troubles is what Ireland refers to as the ethno-nationalist conflict in Northern Ireland that lasted about 30 years, from the late 60s to 1998. Nick Hornby is a big champion of this novel. He calls it beautiful, devastating. It feels real and true, and it loves its characters, utterly authentic people trying to live ordinary lives in desperate times. This book will last. At its essence, this is the story of a young woman caught between allegiance to community and unsanctioned love. So a little more about the story. Amid daily reports of sectarian violence, our main character, Cushla, is living a quiet life with her mother in a small town near Belfast. By day, she teaches at a parochial school, and at night, she fills in at her family's pub. It's there that she meets Michael Agnew, a barrister who's made a name for himself defending IRA members. Against her better judgment, Michael is not only Protestant, but older and married. Cushla lets herself get drawn in by him and his sophisticated world, and an affair ignites. Then the father of a student is savagely beaten, setting in motion a chain reaction that will threaten everything and everyone Cushla most wants to protect. So that is quite a riveting novel. Then we have They're Going to Love You, written by a former ballet dancer. So she was a dancer with the Joffrey Ballet and the Los Angeles Ballet Company. This is a novel about big themes of art, life, death, and family. It's set in the West Village and the New York City ballet world during the AIDS crisis, and also in present-day Los Angeles. It has cameo appearances from ballet luminaries like George Balanchine. And a little more about the story. We've got our main character, Carlisle Martin. Throughout her childhood, she's really only been able to see her father, Robert, a few precious weeks each summer when she visits him and his partner, James, in Greenwich Village. James is brilliant, but troubled. And he gives Carlisle an education in all that he holds dear in life: literature, music, and most of all, dance. Carlisle aspired to follow in her mother's footsteps. Her mother was a former Balanchine ballerina, but mainly she longs to stay in this world with her father and James as part of their sophisticated artistic society, even as the AIDS crisis is devastating the community around them. Instead, a love affair creates a rift in the family, and 19 years later, when Carlisle receives a phone call that unravels the events of that fateful summer, she's given a fresh perspective on her younger self. The New York Times says of this novel that Howery brings an insider's view of the discipline to this buzzy novel about a young choreographer grappling with painful family memories. So as you can tell, it goes back and forth in time. It's really receiving nothing but starred reviews and praise from the author's peers, who call it elegant, layered like the best ballets, and immersive. And so the author is so impressive. In addition to being a dancer and an actress, she's written more novels, The Wanderers, The Cranes Dance, and Blind Sight. And you may recognize the name Magnus Flight, which is her pseudonym with another author for the books, The City of Dark Magic and The City of Lost Dreams. Her nonfiction has also appeared in Vogue and the Los Angeles Review of Books. She currently lives near me in Los Angeles. Cormac McCarthy. He is, of course, an iconic writer. This is the follow-up to his new duology that began with The Passenger earlier this year. The Passenger centered around a plane crash, and Stella Maris is the follow-up. It's an intimate portrait of grief and longing about a young woman in a psychiatric facility as she's seeking to understand her own existence. So it takes us to 1972 in Black River Falls, Wisconsin. Alicia Western, who's 20 years old with $40,000 in a plastic bag, admits herself to the hospital. She's a doctoral candidate in mathematics at the University of Chicago, but she's been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. She does not want to talk about her brother Bobby. Instead, she contemplates the nature of madness, the human insistence on one common experience of the world. And she recalls a childhood where, by the age of 7, her own grandmother feared for her. She surveys the intersection of physics and philosophy, and she hallucinates. All the while, she's grieving for Bobby, who's not quite dead, not quite hers. It's told entirely through, this is fascinating, the transcripts of Alicia's psychiatric sessions. And this book unlocks the secrets and the plot of The Passenger. They can be read independently, of course, but with Cormac McCarthy, you're definitely going to want to learn more about the characters he presents in The Passenger. And set in a psychiatric hospital, I just think that's such a fascinating setting. So he's widely considered to be one of the best living authors. He's won the Pulitzer Prize for The Road, the National Book Award. He's even won Academy Awards because his books have been made into films. No Country for Old Men won Best Picture. And then we have another of my favorite literary writers who's also writing kids' books and books about animals, and she's just got amazing range, Jane Smiley. So this would appeal to Western readers, but also her many, many fans. She's won the Pulitzer Prize, of course, for 1,000 Acres, and this is a rollicking murder mystery. It's set in Gold Rush, California. It's about two young prostitutes who follow a trail of missing girls. It begins in Monterey in 1851, where ever since her husband was killed in a bar fight, Eliza Ripple has been working in a brothel. It seems like a better life, at least at first. The Madame, Mrs. Parks, is kind. The men are relatively well behaved, and Eliza has attained what few women have, financial security. But when the dead bodies of young women start appearing outside of town, a darkness descends that she can't resist confronting. Side by side with her friend Jean, and inspired by Edgar Allan Poe, Eliza pieces together an array of clues to catch the killer, all the while juggling clients who begin to seem more and more suspicious. As the brothel owner, the Madame, Mrs. Park, says, everyone knows that this is a dangerous business, but between you and me, being a woman is a dangerous business, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Showstopper, another mystery from the beloved Peter Lovesay. He's had this Peter Diamond series. He's been writing this series for more than 30 years, but Publishers Weekly said in its starred review that he shows no signs of losing steam or ingenuity. This installment has the cast and crew of a hit British TV show who are rumored to be cursed, but are these spooky deaths coincidences or murder? It's up to Bath detective, it's set in Bath, England, Peter Diamond, to find out, complicating Already complex matters is the fact that Diamond's boss is trying her best to get him out of her hair. He may be forced to retire if he cannot solve this case. Will this be the end of Peter Diamond? That's the cliffhanger. It's suspenseful, it's hilarious, and the whole book is really a send-up of Private Eye and noir tropes. So Peter Loveday is one of only 3 living writers to have the honor of being named the Mystery Writers of America Grand Master, and also receiving the Crime Writers Association Lifetime Achievement Award. He still lives and works in small town England, and this should be just a really fun book. Then we have a debut novel. This is a young Indian woman, about a young Indian woman who finds the false rumors that she killed her husband surprisingly useful, until other women in the village start asking for her help getting rid of their own husbands. This debut, which reviewers have called a rollicking mashup of adventure story, thriller, dark revenge, and comedy, is quite the delight. So our main character, Geeta's no-good husband, disappeared 5 years ago. She didn't kill him, but everyone thinks she did. She soon discovers that being known as a self-made widow has some surprising perks. No one messes with her, no one threatens her, and no one tries to control, i.e. marry her. It's even been good for her business. No one wants to risk getting on her bad side by not buying her jewelry. Now other women, though, in the village have started asking for her help to get rid of their own no-good husbands. So not all of them are asking nicely. And now that Geeta's fearsome reputation has become a double-edged sword, she has to decide how far to go to protect it, along with the life that she's built. So this is written by an Indian American. It's laugh out loud moments. It also addresses serious issues, including the position of women in rural Indian society, as well as the caste system. Age of Vice. You may have already heard about this because it's really getting tons of buzz, and we've done some pre-pub events with Deepti Kapoor, its author. I think she lives in Portugal now. So this is the first in her planned Vice trilogy. Marlon James says of the novel, this book, it's epic, crazy, shocking, mind-blowing, brutal, tender, and heartbreaking. And he says it's one of the best I've ever read. To me, it reads like the series Succession, which I loved. It's equal parts crime thriller and family saga, set in contemporary India. It's the story of a wealthy and corrupt and violent family. It opens in New Delhi at 3 a.m. where a speeding Mercedes jumps the curb and kills 5 people. This is a rich man's car, but when the dust settles, there's a shell-shocked servant who cannot explain what led to the crime. In the shadow of lavish estates, extravagant parties, predatory business deals, and calculated political influence, 3 lives become dangerously entwined. There's AJ, who's the watchful servant born into poverty, rising through the family's ranks. Sonny is the playboy heir who dreams of outshining his father, whatever the cost. And Netta is the curious journalist caught between morality and desire. So this has been sold, no surprise, as a series to Fox TV, and has the feel of The Sopranos or Succession, as I said. It's also a novel very much about class and corruption. There are filthy rich characters to loathe and underdogs to root for, and it is a very satisfying read. Then we have another debut novel. This is The House in the Pines. It's a thriller in which a young woman must find her way back to the New England cabin, armed with only hazy, haunting memories to finally uncover the truth that could save her. Maya, our main character, was a high school student when her best friend Aubrey mysteriously dropped dead in front of the enigmatic man named Frank, whom they'd been spending time with all summer. 7 years later, Maya lives in Boston. She has a loving boyfriend and is kicking a secret addiction that has allowed her to cope with what happened years ago. The gaps in her memories and the lost time that she can't account for haunt her. But her past comes rushing back when she comes across a recent YouTube video in which a young woman suddenly keels over and dies in a diner while sitting across from none other than Frank. So this thriller ensues. It's about trauma. It's our main character's excavating fragments of her past and hidden messages, even into her deceased Guatemalan father's book that didn't stand out to her earlier. And to save herself, she must understand a story written before she was even born. But time keeps running out. All roads are leading back to Frank's cabin. Then if you were a fan of Madeline Miller's Circe, or you love reading novels about mythological characters, this is a beautiful debut novel, Phaedra. It's a feminist retelling of the Greek myth of Phaedra and her unyielding quest for justice. We see that Phaedra has been cast aside all her life. She's daughter of an adulteress, sister of a monster, and now living under Theseus's control and the constant watchful eye of her handsome stepson Hippolytus. When supposedly pious Hippolytus assaults her, Phaedra's world is darkened in the face of untouchable, prideful power. The crime is brought to light. When Phaedra publicly accuses Hippolytus of rape, she sparks an overdue reckoning. The men of Athens gather to determine the truth. Meanwhile, the women of the city who have no vote are gathering in the shadows. The women know the truth is slippery, and there are two sides to every story, and theirs has gone unheard for so long until now. The Hunter is another debut, which reviewers are saying gives us a writer really to watch, Jennifer Herrera. This takes place after reckless behavior costs New York police detective Leigh O'Donnell her job and her marriage. She returns with her 4-year-old daughter to her beautiful hometown of Copper Falls, Ohio. Leigh has stayed away for more than a decade because while the town may seem idyllic, something rotten lies at its core. 3 men in town have drowned in what Leigh suspects to be a triple homicide. She hopes that by finding out who killed them, she might get her life back on course. This is full of atmospheric suspense. The Hunter explores the dark side of a small town through beautifully developed characters and taking on big issues such as police corruption, mental illness, and racial stereotypes, but really in a page-turning mystery. And the author is a former philosophy grad student who is turned literary agent. This is such a intricate, fun, different book. Our author here is a highly acclaimed YA and middle grade author, and she's making her adult debut, and it's inspired by Icelandic folklore. So Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies it presents curmudgeonly Cambridge professor Emily Wilde, who's the foremost expert on the study of fairies, but she's not so good at people. She prefers the company of her books and her dog Shadow and the fair folk to other people. So when she arrives in the hardscrabble village of Havranzik, Emily has no intention of befriending the gruff townsfolk or spending time with the new arrival, her handsome academic rival, Wendell Bamblebee. But as Emily gets closer and closer to uncovering the secrets of the hidden fairies, these are fairies that lurk in the shadowy forest outside the town, she also finds herself on the trail of another mystery. Who is Wendell Bramblebee and what does he really want? So reviews for this are really fun to even read. Whimsical and enchanting romp, the delight of snow-laden forests and changelings, folklore and fairy kings, meticulous footnotes, and academic rivalry and adventure. The author has degrees in archaeology and English literature, and it really lends authenticity to the historical and cultural themes and the depiction of academia. So in that way, it's a revelation on academia too. Bret Easton Ellis, so surprised to have a new book from him. It has been 12 years since his last novel. This reads very autobiographically. The main character is Bret. It's set in a vibrant, fictionalized Los Angeles in 1981, where we meet Bret at 17. He's a senior at the exclusive Buckley Prep School. And when a new student arrives, Robert Mallory, who's bright, handsome, charismatic, and also shielding a secret from Brett and his friends, even as he becomes a part of their tightly knit circle. So Brett becomes obsessed with Mallory. His obsession is equaled only by his increasingly unsettling preoccupation with the trawler. The trawler is a serial killer on the loose who seems to be drawing ever closer to Brett and his friends, taunting them, and Brett in particular, with grotesque threats and horrific local acts of violence. So the coincidences are uncanny, but they are also filtered through the imagination of a teenager whose gifts for constructing narrative are about to make him an explosive literary sensation. So the question in the book, can he trust his friends or his own mind to make sense of the danger they appear to be in? This novel explores the emotional fabric of Brett's life at 17, sex, jealousy, obsession, and murderous rage. Publishers Weekly says Ellis really ups the ante in several ways. He depicts a lavish lifestyle fueled by money and privilege, explores his own fluid sexuality and that of some of his friends, and adds a lurid story of home invasions and murders. One victim is a high school friend. In effect, he mashes up Less Than Zero with American Psycho. As Ellis explores the theme of lost innocence, he demonstrates his skill as a storyteller. And that says it all. Should be fascinating. We have another debut novel, River Sing Me Home. This sheds light on a little known part of Caribbean history. It opens as the master of the Providence plantation in Barbados gathers his slaves and announces the Emancipation Act of 1834, and that they will all be free, and that it will come into effect the following day. They're jubilant for a time until he also says that they are now his apprentices instead and must work for him for another 6 years. So Rachel, our main character, runs and begins a desperate search to find her children, the 5 children who survived birth and were sold into slavery. She needs to know, are any of them still alive? She has to know. The grueling, dangerous journey takes her from Barbados, then by river, deep into the forest of British Guiana, and finally across the sea to Trinidad. These are the stories of the children, Mary Grace, Micah, Thomas Augustus, Cherry Jane, and Mercy. But above all, this is really the story of Rachel and the extraordinary lengths that she goes to find her children and her freedom. So the author, Eleanor Shearer, has a personal connection to the story. She is a granddaughter of Caribbean immigrants who journeyed to the UK in the mid-1900s as part of the Windrush generation. The Windrush was a ship that brought workers from Jamaica, Trinidad, and Tobago and other islands to help fill UK labor shortages. So Eleanor saw an exhibition about the Windrush and spotted a tiny footnote about the mothers who went in search of their lost children after the British Slavery Abolition Act was passed in 1833. That became the heart of this novel. And Jeanette Winterson says it's a strong and beautiful novel that stares into the face of brutality and the heart of love. And are you ready for some nonfiction? We have on sale yesterday. We were just talking about this. Michelle Obama's The Light We Carry. So obviously Becoming was a total sensation. It outsold her husband's memoir, first volume of his memoir, and she is on a similar tour right now with conversation partners, talking about this book, which is has many stories in it, but is very much practical wisdom and strategies for staying hopeful and balanced in today's highly uncertain world. She was in conversation yesterday with Ellen DeGeneres, and she'll be going throughout the country talking about the book, and you'll learn a lot more about it as the year goes by. So in The Light We Carry, she's offering readers a really fresh series of stories and reflection on change, challenge, and power. She draws from her experiences as a mother, daughter, spouse, friend, and obviously First Lady. She's sharing the habits and principles she's developed to successfully adapt to change and overcome various obstacles. These are the wisdom and coping mechanisms that have allowed her to continue to become. She details her most valuable practices like starting kind, going high, and assembling a kitchen table of trusted friends and mentors. She's got trademark humor in here, candor and compassion, and also explores issues connected to race, gender, and encourages readers to work through their fear and find strength in community and living with courage and boldness. Again, like the Prince Harry book, we're offering this in every possible format that you could get it. Bono has a memoir, a major memoir from this artist, activist, and lead singer of the Irish rock band U2. This is the story of his remarkable life, the challenges he's faced, and the friends and family who've shaped and sustained. It's honest, humble, intimate, and profound. It's also includes never before seen photographs and 40 hand-drawn illustrations by Bono. As I'm sure you know, Bono is a groundbreaking activist. He was a leader in the fight against AIDS and extreme poverty, and the co-founder of sister organizations One and Red. He's been Time Magazine's Person of the Year, and to date, U2 has released 14 studio albums and won 22 Grammys. All the reviews for this are starred reviews. They all say it's a must read. The LA Times says this is the rare rock star memoir written by a rock star who, you get the impression, could have been a writer. And he is a writer with this book. Oh, Hugh Bonneville. He is such a favorite for Downton Abbey fans, for Paddington fans. This is his witty and wise memoir. He's a great storyteller. He's writing here about his career in Hollywood, in theater, on growing up with his eccentric family in Paddington. And it also reveals things like what it's like to work with Judi Dench or Kate Winslet or Maggie Smith. So Hugh has had a storied career. He's played opposite Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet, but is perhaps best known for playing Mr. Brown in the Paddington movies and Robert Crawley in the PBS series Downton Abbey. And he lives in West Sussex, England. Oh, I love dessert, I love sugar, but it's not always so good for you. But this is a very special cookbook. It's a love letter to dessert by the New York Times bestselling author of Dessert Person. And Dessert Person is now also the name of a new YouTube show, which our chef here, Claire Saffitz, has begun. It already has millions of subscribers. This is a book where she's returning with 100 recipes for all dessert people. To keep the recipes straightforward and simple, Claire makes sure each recipe is extra efficient, whether you're making, I love just reading the names of these recipes, whipped tres leches cake with hazelnuts or caramel peanut popcorn bars. Fans will find all the warmth, encouragement, and deliciously foolproof recipes. This is such a great series. The Last Interview, I've featured 3 backlists here. This newest one is with Kurt Cobain. And as I'm sure you know, Kurt burst into American consciousness with a vengeance when, with the release of Nirvana's Nevermind, which was an instant classic and invented the grunge music movement and influenced really a generation. But 3 years later, in 1994, he was dead of suicide. As the lead singer and guitarist of Nirvana, he really changed American music, as few musicians ever have. In interviews, he was funny, thoughtful, sarcastic, impassioned, and even kind. So this collection of interviews provides a look at a man who was too often misunderstood. Haruki Murakami. This is a wonderful book for writers. It's the insight of a master novelist and storyteller. His imagination is incredible, and he has quite the cult following. So aspiring writers and readers who've longed to wonder where this mysterious novelist gets his ideas, what inspires his strangely surreal worlds, will be fascinated as Murakami now shares with readers his thoughts on the role of the novel in our society, his own origins as a writer, and his musings on the sparks of creativity that inspire other writers, artists, and musicians. Here are personal details of a life devoted to craft. The initial moment at a Yakult Swallows baseball game when he suddenly knew he would write a novel. The importance of memory, what he calls a writer's mental chest of drawers, the necessity of loneliness, patience, and his daily running routine. This seminal role, and the seminal role a carrier pigeon played in his career and more. So that's pretty intriguing. And he says, what I want to say is that in a certain sense, while the novelist is creating a novel, he is simultaneously being created by the novel as well. Oh, Billy Collins has a new volume of poetry, and these are short poems, a collection of more than 125 small poems, all of them new, and each a thought or observation compressed to its emotional essence. He says, whenever I open a book of poems, I tend to flip through looking for the small ones, just as I might have trust in an abstract expressionist painter if I knew he or she could draw a credible chicken. I trust poets who can go short, and so he is going short here. Here's one of the poems in it, which I love and can relate to. 3 a.m. Only my hand is asleep, but it's a start. I love poetry. Here are some of my other poetry picks. Thich Nhat Hanh, you may not know, he was a poet. This is his definitive poetry collection by the world-renowned Zen master, peace activist. He died earlier this year in January. The foreword is by poet and novelist Ocean Vuong, who writes, Thich Nhat Hanh's work has proven to be the antidote to our modern pain and sorrows. So he was a renowned spiritual teacher, born in Vietnam in 1926, became a Zen Buddhist monk at the age of 16, and over 7 decades of teaching, he published more than 100 books. He passed away at the age of 95, as I said, earlier this year. And though he's best known for his groundbreaking work on applying mindfulness to everyday life, he was also a distinguished poet and a Nobel Peace Prize nominee. So this is a stunning collection that explores the lesser known facets of his life and reveals not only his path to becoming a Zen meditation teacher, but really his skill as a poet through more than 50 poems spanning several decades. So I think it's today that the National Book Award is being announced. Sharon Olds has been getting lots of attention. There's a wonderful profile of her in the New York Times. I think it was last month. She has written a beautiful book. This is Songs from Our Era of Communal Grief and Reckoning, by the Pulitzer Prize and T.S. Eliot Prize winner for poetry, and maybe National Book Award. We'll see. She's really a poet for these times and a powerful woman who won't back down, says the San Francisco Chronicle. At the time of have not, I look at myself in this mirror, writes Olds in this beautiful volume, which opens with a section of quarantine poems, and at its center boasts what she calls Amherst ballads, whose syntax honors Emily Dickinson. So these are old songs of childhood, young womanhood, maturity, all mixed together, and cannot recommend her book enough. And then we have a new hybrid. This is photographs and poetry from Robin Coss Lewis, who won the National Book Award for her debut collection, Voyage of the Sable Venus. She's a former Los Angeles poet laureate, so I know her. And so this book came to be after her grandmother passed away 25 years ago. And she was going through her grandmother's things and discovered a stunning collection of photographs in an old suitcase under her bed. So she was very much inspired by these sepia tintypes and also Technicolor Polaroids as they depict 20th century Black life, as she says it is not often depicted. So she's joining these images with alternative narratives and really framing the way we're telling stories of race and migration. Edward Humes, Pulitzer Prize winner, has written this true crime story and also a profile of forensic genealogy. It's about the cold case of a teenage couple's murderer. which exposed a looming battle between the pursuit of justice and the right to privacy. So it focuses on Detective Jim Scharf, who works together on DNA and found the killer of this couple that was killed in Seattle in the 1980s. The detectives at that time had few leads. The murder weapon was missing. No one witnessed any suspicious activity. And then in deep freeze storage, the evidence from the crime scene sat waiting. Meanwhile, a California resident, C.C. Moore, began her lifetime fascination with genetic genealogy. And when she met up with Jim Scharf, he decided to send the cold cases, decades old DNA to a lab, hoping to bring closure to this murder. He did not know that he and Moore would be making history. As lawyers, policymakers, and police officers fight over questions of consent and privacy, the implications of Scharf's case become ever clearer. Approximately 250,000 murders in the United States remain unsolved today. We have the tools to catch many of these killers, but what is the cost? This book asks. Just a few more. We have Awe. This is the new science of everyday wonder and how it can transform your life, written by a UC Berkeley professor in psychology, who also leads that school's Greater Good Science Center. He's an expert on the science of emotions and was also a consultant to Pixar's Inside Out movie and has worked with Facebook on their Facebook reactions. So this is a radical investigation and deeply personal inquiry into this elusive emotion. If we open our minds, it's awe that sharpens our reasoning and orients us toward big ideas and new insights, cools our immune system's inflammation response, and strengthens our bodies. It's awe that activates our inclination to share and creates strong networks. It's a really important revelatory book, which Adam Grant says we need more awe in our lives, and Datcher Keltner has written the definitive book on where to find it. And I have two books coming from two different imprints at our company on the January 6th report. On the left, we have the complete text of the riveting historic report. The Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol was formed by the U.S. House of Representatives on July 1st, 2021, to investigate that attack and the events leading up to it. This enables every American to learn for themselves what happened at the nation's Capitol on January 6th. And Melville House is a publisher that has been praised for carefully presenting editions of major government reports. It's the result of thousands of interviews, testimony that resulted from the issuance of over 100 subpoenas, countless hours investigating telephone and internet records. And these were all efforts, the efforts were to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election, as you well know. So the central question of the report, answered in stunning detail, is how involved was the President of the United States? And then on the right, we have another official report published by Random House. I really wanted to present these together. This one has a foreword by Congressman Adam Schiff. It is also the official report, and it's now available. And the other one is available in, I think, a couple months in January. Tracy Kidder has written a remarkable book about Dr. Jim O'Connell and his help with the homeless population in Massachusetts. Tracy Kidder, you well know, is a Pulitzer Prize winner, master of narrative nonfiction. Like his previous bestsellers, he is profiling somebody who has broken the mold to change the world. So nearly 40 years ago, after Jim O'Connell graduated from Harvard Medical School, he accepted a year-long stint as a doctor to homeless citizens. This turned into his life's calling. Today, Dr. Jim and his colleagues, in affiliation with Massachusetts General Hospital and the Boston Medical Center, include a street team. They reach rough sleepers by van. Rough sleepers is a British term for people for unhoused people. So they have come to really change the treatment of the homeless people that they encounter. They talk about homelessness as a symptom of the systemic failures that feed American poverty, racism, childhood trauma, violence. Homelessness afflicts a broad and diverse population. And to treat their many illnesses, Dr. O'Connell emphasizes a style of medicine in which patients come first, joined with their providers, and what he calls a system of friends. We meet some of the people in this book that Dr. O'Connell has cared for over the years, including Tony, a protector of others on the streets, and Joanne, who spent many years on the streets and now lectures each new Harvard Medical School class, offering them a rough sleeper's view of what makes a good doctor. And then we have Black Founder. So this is a memoir by the founder, the co-founder of MoviePass. This is about the intersection of power, technology, and race. Stacy Spikes is an award-winning entrepreneur and founder, like I said, of MoviePass. And this is an empowering memoir of a trailblazing business leader and unflinching look at what it means to be Black and ambitious in the upper echelons of record labels, movie studios, and tech startups. His departure from MoviePass marked the start of the company's downfall, but he recently made headlines by repurchasing the tech company and is set to kick off its next phase. This is great for students, entrepreneurs, employers, and tech aficionados. Stacy Spikes was named one of the 21 most influential Blacks in technology by USA Today. And here he's offering unprecedented insight and clear strategy, business advice for BIPOC entrepreneurs looking to beat systemic inequalities. It's also going to be an HBO docuseries, or there is going to be an HBO docuseries on Stacy Spikes, which will premiere at Sundance early in 2023. So watch for that. And then I know I'm I have a few more minutes, I hope, because I wanted to talk about some gift ideas lastly. So these are just 6 books for a range of people. We've got Patti Smith. I love Patti Smith. This is her book of days. It's moving, brilliantly idiosyncratic, and a visual. She won the National Book Award for Just Kids, and I read everything that she's done, but this would make a great gift. It's more than 365 images that chart her singular aesthetic as she posts on Instagram. There are photos from Smith's archives of life on the road, her international travel, train stations, obscure cafes, and of course her personal storytelling is infectious. And then for something for kids, so you may know Oliver Jeffers, who's a very popular children's book author and illustrator. The Day the Crayons Quit and The Day the Crayons Came Home are 2 examples of his big bestsellers, but his fine art is also world-renowned. Now, this story is about a father who takes his 2 kids on a thrilling out-of-this-world adventure into space and invites them to look back at Earth and the conflicts that have taken place since the beginning of time. So his belief is that sometimes we talk down to children about serious issues, and that if presented in the right way, they can certainly handle it and understand conversations and stories and facts about global warming. In a recent interview, he said that he thinks it's really important to talk about real world concerns with children. So he now lives in Brooklyn. He's from Belfast, and I think this is a great book for all ages, really. Then Apricot Lane Farms, my only second cookbook in this whole list. These are 130 recipes from the chef, farmer, and star of The Biggest Little Farm, if you saw that documentary. Molly Chester and her husband left urban LA. They purchased a neglected piece of land northwest of the city in order to create a more delicious and purposeful life. They have succeeded. They now steward 234 thriving acres of gardens, animal pastures, habitat corridors, and orchards. And including their abundant fruit basket, which is a lush tapestry of landscape that provides 75 different varieties of fruit trees. So these are great recipes from their life and their farms. Art criticism, but this is Jerry Saltz, who's known as one of our most popular and controversial art critics. This is a survey of modern art. He's won the Pulitzer Prize. I think it would be great for art lovers. He was an early champion of forgotten and overlooked women artists. He's also celebrated the pioneering work of African American, LGBTQ+, and other marginalized creators. So this takes on artists like Jasper Johns and Jeff Koons, trailblazers. It talks about the Obama portraits, and many in Thomas Kincaid and Kim Kardashian. So it's highbrow, lowbrow. It's a great book for any art lover and really fun reading. I love Joan Didion. She's a touchstone for me. There's an exhibit right now going on at the Hammer Museum that Hilton Owls curated that's wonderful with excerpts from her writing. As you know, she wrote fiction and nonfiction, and this is the latest inclusion in the last interview series that I was talking about with the Kurt Cobain book. So in here, we have interviews and conversations that she had with Hilton Owls, Dave Edgars, Hari Kunzru, and many more. I consider her a California writer because she wrote so passionately about California. And I say passionately, but she, as you know, was a very unsentimental writer, which makes her such a wonderful and easy read in my mind. So certainly she won many new readers with her book, The Year of Magical Thinking, about losing her husband, John Gregory Dunn, and also with Blue Nights about losing her daughter, Quintana. So this should be a really illuminating, great book for any of her fans. And then for bibliophiles, we've got Portable Magic, History of Books and Their Readers by Emma Smith. This explores how, when, and why books became so iconic. It also disrupts the Western myth that the Gutenberg press was the original printing project. And this takes on decorative gift books and just a whole span of history, and would make a beautiful book with illustrations, obviously. And just two quick audiobooks. We've got Lucy Liu narrating Our Missing Hearts, which was Reese Witherspoon's book club pick last month. This is like a novel for the ages. It's about censorship. It's about anti-Asian, about hate, about a child protagonist and librarians. And it's just a really rich, important story and a great audiobook. And Liberation Day by George Saunders is a collection. It's his first, I think, in 8 years of short stories, which is really the form he began with Civil War Land in Bad Decline, and is returning to here. So these are 9 stories, 4 of which are brand new. He's a beloved teacher at Syracuse University. He teaches Russian literature and Chekhov, and this is narrated partly by him, but also with another wonderful cast of narrators. So a few of the themes in these stories, just to end with. So Love Letter is a tender missive from grandfather to grandson. Ghoul is set in a hell-themed section of an underground amusement park in Colorado. And Mother's Day is about 2 women who love the same man, and they come to an existential reckoning in the middle of a hailstorm. And then we have Elliot Spencer, who's an 89-year-old protagonist, finding himself brainwashed, his memory scraped, a victim of a scheme in which poor, vulnerable people are reprogrammed and deployed as political protesters. If you've read Lincoln in the Bardo and have not read George's short stories, you're in for a real treat, and certainly a great listen, because these narrators are top of their game, and he's a wonderful narrator as well. Thank you so much. That's it. Thanks for hanging in with me with such a range, so many books.
This is so awesome, Liz. Thank you. And it looks like a a lot of people are going to get an IOU for the holidays because of the books that won't be published till January. But
Yes.
thank you for taking us through such a great detail. I'm certain everyone like me on this call is really excited to get on the new releases list and get to the peak picks.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask one question was in here that I wanted to present to you, which is who's deciding the book comparisons for these new releases? The question is it an author, an editor? Is it Random House?
It's probably a range. I'm not in on those conversations. I often do the comparisons in these presentations because of having read the book and seen that. But in terms of like our metadata, that comes from the editors, generally speaking.
Great. All right. If there's other questions, please make sure you put them in the chat and we will make sure we follow up. We really appreciate your time and wish you a nice holiday season. I do want to just take a few minutes before everyone leaves to let you know that we did choose through a random generator 3 people who are going to receive a book bag. So the Seattle Public Library Foundation will follow up. Congrats to Brianne Tuttle, Marlene Rinker, and Bridget Daly. So we appreciate all of you joining. And then I did want to just make sure that I called out for all the donors who are here today. I want to make sure that, we highlight all of you. Your support is focusing on education, enrichment, and economic opportunity. So we have programs like Homework Help, which is now back in person, while we're still also providing virtual options through tutor.com. We are hosting around 4,000 individual sessions during the pandemic. Donors are also supporting English Conversation Circle, which has more than 200 sessions last year for immigrants and refugees to practice language skills. And we have over 100,000 new books for the collection added annually. So looking forward to bringing in everything Liz just shared with us. So just to highlight again that, everything that the foundation is doing and with the support of donors, we are centered on equity in elevating the voices of and services by and for historically excluded communities, helping people to overcome legacies of racism and inequality. And access to information and equitable services are essential for our democracy at a time when intellectual freedom and public resources are under threat. The library is at the heart of a democratic society. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for your dedicated support to the library and for your patronage. And everyone have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz. Bye-bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.